Hi, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of TalentED, and I'm your host, Dr. Eric Skanson. And today we have high energy, passionate educator Sarah Johnson joining us. Sarah is dedicated to helping professionals thrive in work, in home, in life. In fact, we were just talking about, family vacations and how to find balance and all of that. But she also does this while building their leadership traits. And as a skilled speaker, Sarah connects authentically with participants and provides practical strategies that can be implemented right away. She's co-author of Balance Like a Pirate and author of Lead with Faith. She also hosts the In Awe podcast, which is about empowering a community and amplifying voices of women and getting ready for an inspiring conversation, everybody, as Sarah shares some of her insights on igniting passion, finding balance, and serving well. So with that, welcome, Sarah, to TalentED. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Hello, Eric. First of all, I'm so glad to be here with you. What a joy. Yes, as you said, my name is Sarah Johnson. I'm a native of Minnesota and a transplant to Wisconsin. I felt like people need to know that about me because I don't think you can totally take the Minnesota out of me, and I don't want to.
That's good. That's good. We love it.
Yeah. So had a wonderful experience growing up in Minnesota, but I did jump over and I got my undergraduate degree at UW-Eau Claire. That's where I met my husband, and we have been in the northwest part of the Wisconsin region for 21 years. And in that space, I've just found ways to learn and grow my education skills, and have found of recent that my deepest passion lies in supporting the people who work hard every day to serve our kids.
It is a hard job, isn't it? It is completely a difficult job. And I don't think those that are not in the profession realize how hard it can be at times. The northwest part of Wisconsin is beautiful, by the way. So I don't think you need to, be ashamed of that at all as a Minnesotan. I mean,
definitely not ashamed. I've had to learn to love it because we have one stoplight in our entire county. So
wow.
Yes, it's gorgeous, but it's very rural. But yes, I am 1 mile away from a beautiful public landing dock that I run to frequently, and It is absolutely beautiful.
Tell me a little bit about this passion area that you have, because it's about supporting educators. How would you define that? What is that passion area?
Interestingly, I found myself in a space the last probably 5 years supporting educators mostly around the topic that I co-authored with my wonderful partners, Jessica Johnson and Kabine, with a framework of going beyond work-life balance. I find myself mostly being not only hired, but just called to help people live with more passion, purpose, and priority, and really doing that by just helping them focus their single processor brains on living with intentionality, because I think we get so caught up in what kind of has been defined as the hamster wheel of life. And a lot of times I think educators are so service oriented, servant leaders in whatever space they serve in. And sometimes we cross the line, like I did, into taking that definition and making it a martyr. So learning how to help people put up boundaries, to set intentions, and to essentially use time and manage their energy is really what I've been doing for the last several years. I remember, Eric, when I started out, I would always think, okay, I'm really traveling away from my family right now. That feels weird. Is this worth it? And I would always, in those first years or first months, find the one person. There was one person in every crowd, whether it was 15 people, hundreds, that would come up to me and say, this is the message I needed to hear today. And that kept me going. And it fuels my passion to this day, after having served and spoken to and coached thousands of educators in the last couple of years, that it's always just purpose driven for that to help.
Do you have like an origin story for this? I mean, this sounds like a prolific, like coming of age story in education. Like, do you have a poignant moment where you're like, I need to serve educators in this space?
It's funny because I could pinpoint many. I started out in leadership very young, and I knew I wanted to be a building principal before I even had my teaching degree. I think I've shared that before, but what I did in that space was kind of all the wrong things. Was striving for the title, working myself kind of to the bone, taking on extra, not really saying no. I could go on and on about all the extra. I think we always can. But I think it was early spring, late winter, midwinter of 2018. And I had been putting into practice all of the things that I say we should do in the balance message. And part of that had been putting in a mindfulness routine, a spiritual routine in the mornings. And I found myself, prior to doing anything else, writing my thoughts. And those thoughts led to spiritual guidance, which led to that I was supposed to leave my principal job that I had finally settled into and
Mhm.
really loved. And things were in a good space, that I was just supposed to leave and not know what it was that was coming next. And so to me, that's very poignant, because I don't think that's the message that a lot of people
Mhm.
often A, receive, and B, are willing to do. So I leapt from the comfort of a position that I loved to explore that, and spent several months trying to figure out what that was supposed to be. And so that's really what led me to this space, is learning to sit and be still and embrace what's good about me and strong
Mhm.
about me. Because as a principal, I don't know if you know this, but you get a lot of criticism and not a ton of affirmation.
Not a ton. No.
So I would say that, I spent some time recouping my self-efficacy and
Mhm.
learned that this is what I'm to do, and found myself with repeated small steps that led to bigger ones over time.
You know
And
what?
yeah,
Oh,
go
I
ahead.
do. I do call myself a recovering elementary principal. It
Yeah.
was great, but there is certainly a recovery period from it, and I think that's a little bit what you're talking to is what how do you move forward from that? And
Mhm.
because it is such a purpose-driven job, school administration, you feel such a burden, such a weight.
Mhm.
And I think it was so brave of you to do that and to find your spot and to be brave enough to step back. And I guess, if you were to talk to educators, how would educators be served by your message?
So I am very intentional about, whenever I do workshops, whether it is with teachers, support staff, title leaders, district office, we are served by sitting in reflection and allowing ourselves to process our current reality. So I make space for that. And then we spend time learning about how we can prioritize in all areas of our full life. So I use often, if it's the going beyond balance message, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I will use that framework where we sit and we think about our life as more than just our jobs, and more than just well, honestly, more than just any title.
Mm-hmm.
We first spend our time looking at who we are as person. You're Eric before you're Dr. Skanson,
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out how we can pour energies into what we need to in our moment, in the phase we're in right now. And it's very different for everybody. It's very personal. So there's not really that, lockstep, but I
Mm-hmm.
help people just spend time in their current reality and then dream for a better vision, and then help them create steps to get there.
Well, and you and I have talked before about the educational ecosystem, and there's a lot of it that feels broken right now. And I think your message is really prolific in that it helps us to find that balance and maybe to try and put this ecosystem back in order,
Mhm.
from school leaders to teachers to parenting to even our students, so that we can all work together for a common good, a commonwealth, right? A a happy commonwealth community is what we're searching for. Uh,
What I wanted to say about that
it-
too is
yeah.
one thing that I want to mention. Probably one of the bigger challenges that I face is that knowledge when you talk about the greater ecosystem. And, I'm studying burnout, and I'm studying all sorts of things in my doctoral work. But I think the hardest thing for me is knowing that we need systemic change, and not just local systemic change, regional, but like in our industry.
Hmm.
We are a risk averse industry, publicly funded. And so when we encounter social issues that we have in the last several years, it makes it even harder to exist within, as you call that, ecosystem.
Hmm.
So there is that real tension point for me, that I do end up serving directly people within the organization. The goal would be to really empower leaders who are in positions to make change,
Hmm.
to embrace these policies that would allow for individuals not to try to self manage or self care themselves out of a scenario that really isn't their burden to bear.
Hmm.
So it's a big picture, but
It is a big picture.
we try to do what we can with what we've got, right?
So if people were in a session with you, what could they expect? How do you live this message for your own life?
Hmm. When people are in a session with me, they can expect authenticity. I have recently been in a classroom, which I haven't had an opportunity to share. It's not in my bio. For the last 2 years, I taught out of my certification area in a library, 300 kids, K-12 or K through 6 every week. And then we had 7 through 12 students coming in. So my message is very authentic of real time, real life practice at the work that we
Mm-hmm.
do. Um, but yes, you can, if you come and do a session with me, or if you hire me for a session for your staff or whatever that is, you can just expect right off the gate that we get deep and we get into it fast. We do our best to create a safe space that everybody
Mm-hmm.
feels seen and welcome, cared for. And then we just get right into it and we start building the purpose around creating this focus on full life.
I think it's interesting when we talk about how we wish our school systems worked, because that's what we strive so much for in our classrooms, right? And we know it's
Mhm.
so important to have that safe space, a balanced space, a place where everybody feels belonging. And then it's like we walk out of our classrooms into this other space,
Mhm.
and there's tension there. Um, and I don't know where I'm really going with that, but it just feels like as educators, we know what the right thing is, but how do we move it out of that smaller sphere?
Yeah, it's a really good point. You're hitting on one of the things I really love is when I get to coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we talk about that, doing workshops and kicking off a message with inspiration and planting a seed is wonderful. But the best part is when you can do that and then follow through and help build that investment. And so it's creating that safe environment and then it's investing in the people to invest in themselves on a more long-term basis. That is where the actual deep joy is for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you've authored a few books, and one of them is Balance Like a Pirate.
Mhm.
If I'm sure people that are watching are familiar with the Dave Burgess. Is it a pirate series? I'm not sure how you would describe it, but
Yeah.
in this book, can you share some key insights, maybe even just from your book that people might find interesting?
Yeah. Well, first of all, so it is in the lead like a pirate series for the pirate empire. I don't know how else you put that or publications, right? And
The
like
Pirate
everything pirate,
Empire. I think
right?
I think that would be a good way to describe it. I love it.
Yeah. Like everything, pirate is an acronym. So it's about passion, there's a whole acronym there.
Yeah.
For me, what I would want for that book, which seems to be really evergreen, is just this what I keep saying is a full life focus, though we didn't use that terminology when we were writing it first, is that we spend time building the case for looking at we call them the 4 quadrants of your life. So we talk about your personal life, which is it's your relationships, it's your health, your physical well-being, your spiritual, mental, finances,
Mm-hmm.
all the things that typically has kind of gone into that 50-50 work-life balance model that doesn't work. So we build the case there for you to be thinking about that, thinking about your current level of satisfaction and how could you work toward increasing the level of satisfaction there. Some people are totally cool there, but they need to work in another quadrant, which we talk about the positional, and that's how you pay the bills. It's about time management in your
Mm-hmm.
job so that you can do that whole idea of, living to work, not working to live
Mm-hmm.
kind of philosophy, and just kind of taming that beast for those of us who are the aholics, because I'm a workaholic. I
Mm-hmm.
fully admit this. Like when you look at it, pastors give the messages that they're most passionate about because it's where they struggle. And so there's me. I'm just hands up right there. But then we also talk about your professional life. So, how are you growing? How are you networking? How are you becoming the most excellent version of yourself and continuing to learn and grow in this profession in a way that you are in the driver's seat of that? Is it going back to school? Is it reading? Is it finally you've done all the consumption and now it's time to create for
Mm-hmm.
others to consume, right? And then finally, our passions. And this is the one that I need to start with from now on because I always end with it. And what I learn is that so many people have replaced their personal passions with their careers, with their families. This is when we talk about our titles, we start to talk in terms of a role identity instead of what really lights Sarah up, like what really gets her ticking outside of her work and her momming and the other things, right? And lot of us have forgotten that. And so there's like a light that's dimmed inside of us. And so we say in that book that if we can get a hold of all four of those areas and figure out what it is we need to do to either pour in or reduce from some of them, we can get toward a more satisfied full life focus.
I'm going to miss my quote on this. And I'm not even sure where I read it or heard it, but it was talking about balance. And we often think about balance as like the scale, right? That everything needs to be equaled out. This particular, I think it was a podcast I was listening to, talked about balance as riding a bicycle. And when is it easier to balance a bike? When you have momentum, right? So thinking about momentum in these areas, I thought was an interesting way to think about balance instead of the typical scale aspect of it, where if we have this much on our personal side, then we need to have this much on our professional side. It's just a different way that I found to look at it that might make sense to some people listening too, is that balance is about making sure we have all of these areas moving forward so that we can keep balancing in them. What do you think
Well, and
about
you
that?
think I love that. I've heard about that one, and I also think just in general, we really want to dispel that myth of balance because it's a lie we all purchase for some reason. And I think a huge part is just learning what makes you feel personally satisfied and being willing to recalibrate often. That if you have something in place for a while, doesn't mean it needs to be there forever. What no's do you need to give to replace some of the yeses you gave, right? And just being open to raising your consciousness to what makes you feel personally satisfied. And for some people, that is a ton of work, and it's a life blend, and for others, it's a lot more travel, and it just kind of depends on the phase of life that you're in. But yeah, just being mindful about it instead of just letting life happen.
Do you find that you spoke to this a little bit about misconception around the balance piece. Are there any other misconceptions or challenges that you've encountered in this area that you just want to like call out and dispel right now? That's a big question, by the way.
It is a big question. And when you asked me, my heart went right to gender issues, and also just bias and stereotype in leadership, and how another area of passion has for me been focusing on gender issues in leadership and learning about the challenges that everyone faces. But when we were talking about balance, part of why the principalship, for example, let's talk about that. It's an outdated model that you're supposed to be everything to everyone. The middle management is such a ridiculous expectation for
It
so many
is.
people, and that it doesn't matter what gender you are. We're moving into a space where if we want to have a family and be a school leader, there are sacrifices that we have to choose to take, or we need to set up the boundaries and be comfortable with what those boundaries look like in order to still be effective, but also be present, because we only get so many years with our children. And really that whole model of being the first one in the parking lot and the last one to leave does not lead to a satisfied full life focus. So I don't know. I've just spent a lot of time personally analyzing it, and still believe that we can individually figure out what that looks like for us, even in those systems that are so broken. But I also want to say it's going to take advocacy and policy change, or we're going to continue to see turnover in these positions.
All right. Let's get to know Sarah a little bit more. Are you ready for a fun one?
Okay.
Sarah, if you could have a superpower for a day, what would it be and how would you use it to impact your sphere or your world of education? What would you do?
Well, I've always said that if I had a superpower, I'd want everyone's superpower so I could do it all, because that's the quintessential aholic, right? I'd want to be able to, walk through walls and hear people's thoughts and fly and do all the things that could
Do
be
it
everybody
all.
everywhere, right? Like a hummingbird, and just be there. And how would I use it to impact? Well, for me, no matter what I'd be doing, I'd want to help people to their greatest good, whatever that would look like. So if I could read their mind, then I could help them get what they actually want instead of what they've said. If I could fly, I'd bring them up if they want to take a nice little trip like I do. I always wanted to skydive. Yeah, so pretty much just use it for anyone around me that would benefit.
So if you had an unlimited budget, let's say you're Jeff Bezos.
Oh, okay.
And you're going to put on an epic teacher appreciation event, what would you do?
Oh my goodness, that I'm going to overthink that right now, because I think it's individualized, right?
Uh,
So the appreciation is going to be for how everyone wants to receive it. Sometimes it's going to be time to process and enjoy. Sometimes it's going to be treats, trips, unlimited
mhm.
budget, and every single item they would ever think they might need
Feel
for
like
their
Oprah, like
classrooms,
you get
right? Like,
whatever you want,
you
you
get
get whatever you
this.
want.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think for the most part, for educators to feel really appreciated, they want to be honored and seen and validated for the work that they do more than they would want a TV. But I'm sure, like a cruise would be fine too.
And a cruise might be fine too. Yeah. Last question. If you had to choose one empowering like anthem walk-up song that represents your journey and message, what would you choose?
Any song except something that was written by Neil Diamond. Just kidding. I don't even know if he wrote his own music or performed it, but I had to throw that in there because I am a musical lover and I can't stand his voice. But I've decided it's Trust Fall by Pink. I try to keep myself a little updated. She just released one. And for me, it's upbeat, it's joyful, and I think that our lives to be able to be vulnerable is a trust fall.
There you go.
And to just really live life with energy and verve and excitement, it takes a lot of trust.
Well, you better put it on your playlist because if you're ever walking up and I'm around, we're gonna play Trust Fall.
Sounds good.
Okay, there you have it, folks. That's some fun and insightful questions for Sarah, but I'm gonna ask her one more question. A call to action, Sarah. What is your call to action for everybody that's listening today?
I would just say that if you find yourself in that space of burnout, if you're looking around and all you see in the algorithms is the negativity, the broken down feelings, the disheartened emotions that everybody's leaving, spend time refocusing your purpose. Spend time remembering why you got into education, what your mission, who you want to show up as every day, and the vision of who you want to be, and really just make space to choose how you're going to get there. What can you start saying no to? And what are you going to start welcoming into your life? It really starts with you being honest and spending time in reflection.
Great words of insight, Sarah. Thank you so much. With that, thank you everybody for tuning in and watching this episode of TalentED. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review. And if you have any suggestions for future topics or guests, please contact us. And I want to thank Sarah for her authentic time with us today. It was absolutely amazing. And until next time, I want everybody to keep learning, keep growing, and stay PKS, which is positive, kind, and supportive. Thanks, everybody.